All right. Good morning, everyone. Cassie McSherry here with Assurity Title. I am not going to speak very much. I'm just super excited to introduce Traci Koster. She is here only for a short time because she just said that she has to catch a flight. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for realtors and mortgage LO, all of you to ask her any questions you have specifically in reference to the I guess you call it a referendum, right? That we're going to reform. I don't know all the political jargon, but that's what we have Traci
Pretty
here for.
accurate.
So,
Yep. Yep.
yay, Traci Koster. Go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit, and then we'll open it up to people if you want to give a little summary or something, or lead with that, and then we'll start taking people's calls or
Sure.
questions.
Sure. So Traci Koster, both a lawyer in town in Hillsborough County, Hillsborough, Pasco, Pinellas. But I also serve in the state legislature. I represent House District 66. So that's Northwest Hillsborough County is my district. About 180,000 residents of Hillsborough County are in my district. As I know all of you are aware, last legislative session, we passed a House referendum or a legislative referendum to go on your ballots for property tax reform. I know you guys, I'm assuming you've been hearing a lot about this over the last 18 months. The governor's been very vocal about trying to reform property tax. And so as a part of that agenda, we passed the referendum that will be on the ballot in November. There are still some lawsuits that are pending before the courts. So I guess there is still a slight chance that maybe it doesn't end up on the ballot or it looks a little different on the ballot than it does now. But for purposes of this call, I think we'll just assume it's going to be on your ballot as far as questions go. But if you have questions about kind of where, you know, potentially could end up not on your ballot, I'm happy to try to answer those as well, though it'll be a little tricky since that's really out of my purview. That's more with the courts. So happy to open it up to questions and see how I can best answer them.
Can you explain it a little bit more?
Yeah, okay, sure. So what's going to happen, assuming it passes the way it's currently written, for 2027, your homestead exemption will go up to $150,000 of your property tax or of your appraised value of your house. We are not touching the schools. Any of the funds that go to schools are not touched. Those as a legislature, we felt very strongly that we needed to protect the money that funds our schools. In 2028, the homestead exemption amount will go up to $250,000. If this passes, we still have what's called an implementing bill to do. So once the referendum passes, once the voters tell us, yes, we want to do this, then the legislature has to go back to the drawing board and really put in place all of the nitty-gritty on how it's going to play out. Right. So right now it is very broad. It just kind of includes the overall concept of what we're accomplishing, but then the ins and outs of how it gets accomplished would be left to the legislature to do an implementing bill. Again, not touching the school funding. So if your house is appraised at a lower amount, then you're going to see a higher percentage benefit. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I have a question, Traci.
Sure.
In terms of people that have been in their homes for a long time, right? I've been in my house 14 years. Is it going to benefit me as much as, let's say, somebody who just purchased their home?
Yeah, I actually think it will because we're not going back and reassessing everybody's homes. So if your home is assessed at a rate from 20 years ago, then I would imagine that this is going to help you maybe even more so than somebody who just purchases at a higher assessed value. I'm not a mathematician. I'm a lawyer and I try to avoid as much math as I can, but in my mind that I think that's how that works. Obviously, if you're purchasing now and you're at a higher assessed value, then the benefit to you, I think, would be maybe
Less.
even less.
Yeah. So if you had a home that you purchased years ago, right, and the assessed value was 200,000, you're saying they will only be paying taxes on 50,000?
Yes.
That is lovely. And
Yes.
that,
Do you guys have any way to determine what the likelihood is that this will pass?
Great question. Everybody I talk to is very split on that. I saw some polling the other day from a pretty good polling source that says right now it's polling at about 62%. It needs 60% to pass. I think as we get closer to November, you're going to see people, one of two things is going to happen. Either people are going to spend some money to attack this thing, or nobody's going to really say much about it, and the voters are just going to have to decide. I suspect the first. I suspect there are going to be some groups that spend some money to attack this. I think, your local governments aren't allowed to campaign against a referendum, but there are groups out there that strongly believe this is going to have such a negative impact on local governments that I suspect you may have some groups that campaign against this. The pundits I've talked to and the pollsters that I've talked to think that if this gets attacked close to November, it probably doesn't meet the 60% threshold. But right now, people are saying it's polling a little above 60%.
Like, I don't know what homeowner would vote against it. What homeowner? We
Right.
had talked about this on a previous call, I don't know if last week or week before, a few weeks ago. Just the topic came up. We haven't talked about it in detail like you're talking about it. Where, well, renters may have an issue with it. However, I had heard that our regional sales manager, I mentioned that there would be a cap on the amount that an investment property taxes could go up,
Correct.
including this as a part of this bill too. So in that case, that would or could benefit a renter.
Sure. Yeah, I just don't know how much people really understand it, right? And so it's going to be about the messaging. But you're right. I left that part out when I was explaining the bill. So what the bill, not a bill, the referendum also does is it says that commercial properties or non-homestead commercial properties are capped at going up 5% each year instead of 10%. So that does trickle down to renters. Um, but will the general population understand that? And will the messaging be enough to not get it above the threshold? The governor has said he's not going to, the governor has said publicly he's going to vote for it, but he's not going to spend a bunch of money campaigning for it. So that's going to leave it up to other folks who may not want it for whatever reason they don't want it. And if that messaging is good enough to scare people, constitutional amendments scare people in general, right? So, uh, you know, I think a lot of people generally just vote no on constitutional amendments because they don't quite understand them the way they're drafted. And if the court comes back and says that the specific language that we pass as a legislature isn't constitutional in terms of what it can and can't say, and the Supreme Court revises that language, that could also have an impact because the way it's drafted right now, it's it's easier to read for the general public, and if that gets more confusing, I think that could hurt its chances of
Which
passing.
that's nice for a change where it's actually easier to understand.
Right, but there's so many rules and about what a constitutional ballot language can look like. And so if the court says no, then I think that could impact
Would
the
that be
rate.
for us that are not attorneys and involved with the legal side of things? Is that the Florida Supreme Court or is that the U.S. Supreme Court?
The Florida Supreme Court,
Okay.
who's largely appointed by our governor. So, how do politics play into this? I don't know. I'd like to think they don't because I feel strongly that our judicial branch is supposed to be free from politics, but um, you know, we're all people.
Yeah, I saw like a thing against it where the police won't be able to have the full funding, but I've also saw statistics where they were talking about how much real estate taxes that we're now bringing in compared to 5 years ago, and comparing like the amount of like outstanding, expenses going out haven't like kept up with the amount of real estate tax coming in, so it shouldn't negatively affect
Sure. And look, there's
the
going to
police.
be, yeah, and but again, that goes to my first point on the messaging, right? So if you're just a general consumer of political advertising and you're not, which is the vast majority of our voters, and you're not super comfortable with constitutional amendments to begin with, and then you see a commercial that says police and firefighters aren't going to show up as quickly to your door because property taxes are going away, your instinct's going to be to vote no, right? And so while I don't think that that's completely accurate, like I don't think that that's accurate messaging, if that's the message, it's going to hurt the chances and you need a two-thirds vote. So, but the other point I'll make is this is going to impact different municipalities and counties differently, right? The impact that this is going to have on Hillsborough County or Pinellas County is going to be very different than the impact this is going to have on Taylor County in the Panhandle, right? Like that's just the reality. Their property values are lower, so their impact is going to be higher. Um, and that's just a reality. So that will have to get flushed out, and some places will be impacted more than others. But
I had heard Ron DeSantis talking about where in situations like that, that there'll be some type of system set up where the counties that don't bring in as much tax revenue can basically get taxes from some of the bigger counties that have surpluses.
yeah, I mean, he's talked about a lot of different things. One thing I can tell you, well, first of all, he will not be in Tallahassee when this gets implemented, because he terms out he's gone in January. We have a new governor in January. So, but one thing I can tell you is the legislature has said we're not going to be a bailout. The state taxpayers' dollars are not going to be a bailout to the overspending of local government and municipalities. Like you cannot just count on us to be there um to pick up the pieces, right? So the governor wanted the trust fund. He wanted to create a trust fund. The legislature said, no, we're not doing that. So I wouldn't count, I am telling my local government friends not to count on that. And and do with that with what you will, right? If that means you don't want to support the referendum, don't support the referendum. But we can't promise that we're going to use other taxpayer dollars to backfill.
Now, the counties that have less tax revenue coming in, they also have less amount of people there too. So they shouldn't need as many police officers, firefighters.
Sure.
I believe
Sure.
that's the way it works.
It looks like there's a question in the chat. They've talked about the exemption. Yeah, was that meant for everyone, right? I'm guessing. Okay. Yeah, they talked about the exemption going up to 500,000. Is that part of the referendum? So, no, not currently. It does say in the referendum that it's up to the government to kind of come up with a long-term plan on future adjustments to the property taxes, but we're not obligated to that, and it doesn't happen automatically based on this referendum. The highest it gets is to the 250 in 2028.
I do think it's important to note it too that I think 50,000 is a tax exemption now that was based right from the 80s. Right? Wasn't that
It's been a very long time since we've looked
right?
at property tax reform. I wouldn't want to be quoted on exactly when that number
Right.
came up, but it's been a very long time. We have not adjusted for inflation. We have not adjusted for the rise in property values.
Correct.
And look, our local governments and our municipalities and our law enforcement, they were operating, I think as somebody was saying, and Now I don't know where he went, but you know, police were still showing up 5 years ago. Fires were still being put out 5 years ago. So I'm not saying that this isn't going to have an impact on some of those things, but I do think it really forces your government to look at what we're doing with your money, as we should, right? If every decision on how to run a government was easy, then everybody would serve in government. It's not easy. We're elected to make very difficult decisions, and we're elected to be good stewards of your money, right? It's your money. You have worked hard to earn it. And yes, there are certain functions that government should have and needs to have, and we've decided as a country that that's how we're going to operate. But that doesn't just mean that we spend it willy-nilly without accountability. So I think that's the balance we're trying to strike. And ultimately, it's going to be left up to the voters. What do you want to do?
I
You
agree
know?
with you. I agree with you. It's going to make things, cities and municipalities look more at where they put the money and what they do. And maybe, and I mean, I know this is kind of a general thing, but maybe less beautification of the middle of your median in the middle of somewhere every year, maybe do it every 2 years and spend more money somewhere else. So I agree on that.
I mean, it's just like you and I, I mean, unless some of you are billionaires, if you are, I'm jealous, but it's just like you and I, we have to balance our budgets too, right? We have to figure out from year to year, sometimes week to week, month to month, where do we spend our money? What do we need versus what do we want? And, it's even more restrictive at the government level because, um, first of all, there's a lot more wants, but second of all, it's not our money, right? And there's certain limited government functions that we have to provide, but again, at the end of the day, it's not our money. So we do need to be good stewards of it. And so
I
that's the intent.
Yeah, they'll make it up if they have shortfalls. I got a comparison example. The city of Seminole last week voted for a $230 non-ad valorem addition to the tax bill because they had a stormwater remediation shortfall in their budget. And so they just went ahead and passed it. Um, right over the Park Boulevard Bridge is Indian Shores Beach. And I did a couple of mortgages for the city manager. And right before the pandemic, they got this little park on Indian Shores called Tiki Gardens. And she said, Kevin, you need to go over and take a look at this new statue we put at the entrance of Tiki Garden. We spent $1.3 million on it. She said, we've got more money than we know what to do with because the beaches, the cheapest condo is 900,000. And this was before the pandemic. So
Right.
and even an empty lot, they property tax them at highest and best use. So they've got like tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions in their budget for the little teeny city of Indian Shores, and they don't know what to do with all the money.
Yeah.
So they whacked that all away. You got Seminole on one side of the bridge struggling with their budget. So if there's shortfalls, city council will get together and they'll say, oh, we got to have a non-ad valorem. I did a closing 2 days ago, and some of you might have saw the press release for these young husband and wife firefighters. One's Tampa, one's Largo. I said, well, at least you've got job security. AI is not going to take over your job. They go, no, but when the property taxes go away, that's going to take away our job. So
That's
they're
the message.
concerned.
Yeah, that's
That's the
misinformation.
message. Look, one thing I've learned, I'll leave you with this. But one thing I've learned in my 6 years in the legislature, and I'm going into my last election in November, the sky never really falls, right? They want to, everybody comes in your office and tells you that the sky is falling. Um, and I have not seen it fall, right? We we always let the dust settle. Things always shake out where they're going to shake out, and we pivot, we adapt, and we figure it out. And Florida's doing a great job. We're moving in the right direction. We've saved for a rainy day. We've saved for a lot of rainy days at the state level, and the fiscal status of our state is phenomenal. And this is going to work itself out too, whether it passes or doesn't pass. But you know,
Government's got a use it or lose it mentality when it comes to a budget.
mhm, mhm.
So, if
Yeah,
they got the money, they're going to find places to spend it. And if you tighten your belt, they're going to find a way to deal
they'll
with
still
tighten your
manage.
belt. Yeah.
They'll still manage. Yeah, I agree. I
Does
Casey,
agree.
that's
this do
so
does
true.
this do anything to affect the current homestead cap that's in place on the assessed values not being able to go up more than 3% per year? Does anything change with that?
No, we did not change that. We didn't change that. And we did, another thing I forgot to mention is we are making it harder to adjust the rate so that they can't just, if this passes, they can't just then adjust the rate higher to offset the savings. So we've made it a little bit more difficult to pass um, rate adjustments as well.
And that's with the property appraisers, right? The county property
Correct.
appraisers.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
the
it seems
fear
like a
I'm
bunch of common sense to me.
Yeah.
that's the fear I'm hearing from a lot of people out there is that if this passes, the statement is, well, we don't receive state income tax, so they're going to find that money somewhere. And so, how can you? I mean, what is a rebuttal to that? What is some way to reassure people?
I think the rebuttal to that is, look, that may prove to be true at some level, but I think that that's going to be in some of the smaller um, counties if that happens at all. But I think that before that happens, your governments are going to be forced to really look at their spending. Um, and your local governments are far more accountable to the people than your state governments, right? Like if your local governments are finding ways to nickel and dime you after this passes, then take them out of office, right? They don't belong to be there. If they don't deserve to be there. That sentence didn't sound right. They don't deserve to be there, right? If they're not being good stewards of your taxpayer dollars or if your hard-earned money, then they don't deserve to be there. And it's much easier to take out somebody at the local level than as you go up in government, it's harder and harder and harder, right? It's hard to get rid of the folks in DC. I'm sure you guys know that. You've seen that. So that's kind of my rebuttal, right? Hold your local folks accountable to spend your money the way they should be.
And it's also kind of nice that the property and tax collector are two separate organizations as well too. So
Right.
Right.
they don't go hand in hand because like what I've experienced with one of our daughters goes to a private school and the Step Up for Students scholarship that came into effect, I think it was a few years ago now, of almost $8,000 that they're eligible for. Well, you've seen a lot of the private schools
Raise
increase their tuition costs by close to that same amount. So
Right.
it pretty much
It's the
ate up.
same
Yeah.
same analysis, right? I mean, that's what local governments just increase their budgets. Well, let's bring them back down to some reality. I hate to jump off because it's been such a
I
great
know. Thank
conversation.
you so much for being here. I appreciate you taking the
Absolutely.
time.
It's
She had
my
a very
pleasure.
small window.
Yes, but thank you so much for having me. I wish you the best, Cassie. If more questions or anything comes up, please don't hesitate. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm happy to chat some more.
All right. Thank you. Safe travels to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Bye.
Did anyone have any other last calls or anything, any questions for title before we jump off here? I hope
Cassie,
everyone's
you're
having a
awesome.
great, I hope everyone's having a great summer.
You
Hopefully.
were awesome for getting her to come on board. This was fun.
Thanks. You
Thank
know, I have in the same breath that you have to say non-political, right? In what we do, I also know that one of the blessings of living in this country is that we have the privilege and the responsibility to question the people that are in positions of power that we've elected in there. So I go to Tallahassee twice a year, once for Realtor Days, the other for Florida Land and Title. And I go into these offices, and I encourage you guys to do that too if you have not. And it doesn't matter what you believe or whatever, but I do agree with Traci. I think a lot of what we see on the news would have us thinking that our country is about to implode every day. And you have to be careful. And when you get out and talk to these people face to face, and you really look at, I mean, I'm not political at all, but it's staying on top of the things that impact our industry are so important, you know, and impact realtors, mortgage brokers, all of that.
Our
And
clients.
yes, yes, yes. You
I
know,
mean, this would be huge, especially for your, your younger homeowners and even
oh,
older homeowners
yes,
that are on their fixed income. This would be huge,
right.
and I thought Kevin brought, I think it was Kevin that brought up the point where in Indian Rocks or wherever it was, that they just did like a non-ad valorem, like add-on. So like,
Yeah,
let's
it's seminal.
put this into effect across the board. And then in the special circumstances, like in specific cities or, or that they need to implement a non-ad valorem to increase it, maybe do it like that instead.
Right. Well, and I had the benefit, I was at Suncoast Tampa Association of Realtors. They had the two property appraisers um, from Hillsborough and Pinellas, the general Pasco, he couldn't make it. But, and they were saying that, you know, do they think referendum, you know, a referendum needs to happen? Absolutely. Do they like the way this one's going to be implemented? You know, they kind of questioned it, but core services, if you will, fire, police, that's going to be top priority for every community, you know. So, you know, I don't know that I believe people when they're like, oh, well, I no one's going to be around to put out a fire on my house. I don't know that I believe that's true, you know? So it's just, you got to kind of vet out and talk to your local people and read about it. I mean, listen, I took this, I have it printed. This is the referendum. Okay. I put it in ChatGPT and said, what do I need to know? I suggest everybody do that too. Right. And I want to bring up and believe me, I am not political. Since I've become a business owner, I've become more aware than I was probably when I was just, I don't want to say just an educator, but when I was an educator. But when you become a business owner, and you all are business owners, you know, if you're a realtor, you're an entrepreneur of your own business, you know, looking at what impacts you is very important. And we live in an AI stage now where you can take these things and summarize it, put it in everyday language so you understand, you know, how would this impact what, you know, I live in Hillsborough County. You know, Traci is a representative of where I live. If you're over here in this West Chase, Odessa, I want to shake hands and speak to the county commissioners and all those people that represent me as a resident and a business owner. And I want to talk to you, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or whoever, if you're representing me and my interests. And I encourage all of us to do the exact same, you
Yeah, I
know?
listened to this guy who wrote a book. He always voted Democrat, and he wrote a book called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's a sports guy, and he goes, listen, I don't know why any like people that are sports people or business owners would talk strongly either way, like on political side of things. Just talk
Well,
about
and I think it's important too to recognize that, you know, we've gotten afraid to like have a dialogue, I think. Like, what's wrong with asking someone, you know, we can have a dialogue without being aggressive, you know, ask legitimate questions, you know. I think sometimes if you're on the news loop, but these are everyday people that are just like, once you meet them and you walk into their office, I've walked into Traci Koster's office, many others up in Tallahassee. They are there. They want to know what their constituents want. They want to know, what are people saying? What are you concerned about? And, you know, get out there and speak it. Because if you're not speaking it, somebody else is. I'll say that, you know? So I'm so glad that we were able to get her on, though. I was so nervous because she was like, "Oh, I'm traveling." She is going to be at the Tampa West Chase Rotary too. She does have an opponent. We're reaching out to him, who's running in the Democratic seat against her, because we want to have him come and speak about the homestead specifically, because this is something that's impactful, I think, before the vote in November. Whether it makes it to, the ballot or not, that's still up for discussion. And I also want to encourage all of you too, that August 18th vote, which is the primary vote, there are some judicial races on that are nonpartisan. So don't think you have to be a Republican or a Democrat to vote on that August 18th vote. There are really important races there that will impact our community that you guys should get out and vote for on August
That's a good
18th.
point. And the tax reform is in November, correct?
Yes, that's going to
There's
be right. That's going to be in November.
There's not a preliminary thing in.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's correct. But there's some family law, judicial, countywide judicial races, and then like area races that are important. So I encourage you guys to, do your research on that and get out and vote for that. I don't care who you vote for. I just think it's so fantastic that we live in a country where we get to vote. I mean, honestly,
do you know, can anybody sign like an executive order like you hear like the president does regarding this tax reform, or it has to be the 2/3?
You're asking me something I'm not sure. I don't know. I can ask my best friend ChatGPT. I mean, he really has helped me through a lot. Yeah, I'm not sure. Anybody have anything else? Any title questions? I know title seems so boring today. Anybody have a crazy title experience that they... No? All right.
We'll save those questions for next month.
Okay. All right.
That'll be your session for sure. Thank you again for having Traci join us and
thank you,
getting
guys.
a little insight. I did pick up some nuggets, of information and just like where it stands right now, the challenges that it's facing, and just general overall, because there is a lot of, because it was written in such layman's terms, it's so vague at the same time, because it seems too simple the way it was explained in the download that I was able to find from the state site. And so voters and, homeowners, renters, everybody has to do their due diligence and see where this benefits them and, or not, that it's going to be down to them. And as I said, we get the privilege of being able to vote and make our voices heard. So.
Yes.
I love too that Traci brought out how now we can be a little bit more aware of the messaging that's going to come out to try to deter or push you to vote a certain way and whether it's really truth. So it's important for us to, like you said, Gabriella, do the research, find out exactly what this is about. So, and I didn't even know how they could change the language to make it even more complicated so that people aren't able to really understand what there's, voting for. So this is great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, you guys have a blessed rest of your week. I'll see you guys next month.
Yes.
Will summer be over by next month when I see you again? Kids
no.
Nope,
not yet.
All right. All right. You guys take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.